AITA for refusing to attend my brother's wedding after his fiancée chose the girl who got me expelled to be a bridesmaid instead of me. I feel completely torn over this situation, but I honestly don't know if I can bring myself to go to my brother's wedding. His fiancée, Leah, has asked Sarah, the same girl who betrayed me in one of the most painful moments of my life, to be a bridesmaid. And to make matters worse, she didn't even consider me, his only sibling, for that role. Let me take you back to where all of this began. A few years ago, I was attending a conservative college, the same place where my brother met Leah. It was a deeply strict environment where purity culture was not just preached, but practically enforced. During my time there, I became the victim of a terrible situation. A guy, James, took advantage of me in a way that was non-consensual. The worst part was that someone walked in on the situation, and instead of talking to me or trying to understand what was happening, rumors began to spread. James's friend group soon got involved, and the narrative spiraled out of control. They twisted everything, making it seem like I was equally at fault for breaking the college's rules. In this group of self-appointed moral police was Sarah, a girl notorious for reporting others to faculty whenever she felt it was her duty to do so. I decided to trust Sarah and confided in her, hoping she might understand. I explained to her what had truly happened, that it wasn't consensual and that I was still trying to process everything. I begged her to give me some time to gather myself before going to the faculty. I even said that if she truly believed it was necessary to report the incident, I would go with her and tell the truth. I just needed more time to prepare myself mentally and emotionally. Despite my plea, Sarah went behind my back. She told the faculty her version of events, one that implicated both James and me. This led to both of us being expelled from the college. However, because of the deeply ingrained bias in purity culture, James was quickly invited back to school while I was left to fend for myself. Nobody bothered to ask for my side of the story. Nobody cared about the truth. The faculty took Sarah's word as fact, and I was forced to leave without any chance to defend myself. Now, let's fast forward to my brother and Leah's wedding. Leah and I used to be very close. We were even roommates during that awful time in my life. I trusted her with everything, sharing every detail of what happened as it unfolded. There were even times when Sarah accused me of things that Leah had done, and I took the blame because I cared about her so much. After I was expelled, though, Leah went completely silent. I didn't hear from her again until a few months later, when she started dating my brother. When it came time to plan the wedding, I found out that not only was I not asked to be a bridesmaid, but Leah had chosen Sarah for that role. Sarah, the same person who got me expelled and ruined my reputation. The idea of attending this wedding makes me physically sick. It's a destination wedding, which is already difficult for me to afford as a full-time college student and part-time teacher. But the real issue is the emotional weight of being in the same room as Sarah. Watching her stand proudly beside Leah and my brother as though she's someone special to them feels like a slap in the face. My brother and Leah both know exactly what Sarah did to me. They were fully aware of how much pain she caused me. Yet, they still chose her to play an important role in their wedding while excluding me. It's hard not to see this as a betrayal, and it breaks my heart. I don't want to ruin their special day, but I genuinely don't think I can sit there and pretend everything is fine. Am I wrong for feeling this way? Would I be the bad guy if I didn't go to the wedding? Well, many of you have been asking for an update, so here it is. I've had a conversation with my brother about everything that's happened, and I retold him the full story of what went down. He told me that he already knew most of it, but there were a few details about Leah that he hadn't known. After our conversation, he spoke with his fiancée, who also knew the majority of the story. Unfortunately, instead of siding with me, she defended Leah. To make matters worse, she reiterated that she's choosing her closest friends to be her bridesmaids, and unsurprisingly, I'm not one of them. I want to make it clear that I don't care about being a bridesmaid. That's not what's bothering me. What's hurtful is that my brother and his future wife seem to be completely dismissive of what Leah did to me, even after hearing my side of the story. After that conversation, my brother's fiancée went directly to Leah to talk things over. Leah's response was that she was simply concerned about James's mental health and didn't mean for me to get caught in the crossfire. Let's be clear. This whole situation started because I went to Leah personally and confided in her. I asked her to include me in any conversations she planned to have with the faculty, but she chose to exclude me and went behind my back. Because of that, I ended up getting expelled from college. Leah's actions directly harmed me, and yet now she's still being treated like an innocent party. What really baffles me is why my future sister-in-law didn't just pick up the phone and talk to me directly about all of this. In my brother's words, no final decisions have been made. But from everything I'm hearing, it's looking like Leah is still going to be a bridesmaid. As if that wasn't enough, they've asked me to sing at the wedding as some kind of consolation prize. Obviously, I'm refusing. I can't bring myself to participate in a celebration where the person who caused me so much pain is being honored, while I'm expected to simply accept it and move on. Now, on to the next story. My friend's boyfriend is weirdly invested in my life. Let me start by saying that I'm currently in a relationship, and although the situation I'm about to describe feels bizarre, everyone around me seems to act like it's completely normal. I'm starting to feel like I'm the only one seeing how strange this really is. A few months ago, before I got into a relationship, I was using a dating app pretty casually, mostly for fun with my friends. I wasn't seriously looking for anything, knowing I likely wouldn't find anything meaningful there. That's when I matched with a guy, James.19. James didn't like using the app's messaging feature and preferred Instagram, so I gave him my handle. At the time, I even mentioned him to my friend Jane.8. My Instagram is full of photos with my friends, nothing unusual. After chatting with James for a bit, I started noticing some red flags. His attitude was kind of aggressive. At the same time, I was dealing with personal issues, so I decided to ghost him. However, I kept posting as usual on Instagram. Fast forward a few months, Jane excitedly tells me about this guy she matched with on a dating app. To my surprise, it's James. She starts saying how she understands why things didn't work out between me and James, pointing out that we don't have much in common. She's thrilled about her upcoming date with him, and I genuinely wanted to be happy for her. Things escalated quickly between them. After their first date, Jane shared that it went really well. But by their second date, James was already pushing hard to meet her friends. He even insisted on planning the whole thing himself, which felt excessive. I told Jane that she didn't have to include me right away, especially since their relationship was still new. I assured her that I wouldn't be offended if I wasn't invited. But Jane was adamant about me being there. She said all she needed to do was let James know I'd be attending. On their third date, Jane casually asked James about his celebrity crush. His answer? A well-known actress who happens to share my ethnicity. He even went on to say that women of my ethnicity were his type. Jane and I don't share the same ethnicity, and James was fully aware of that. Jane finally told James that we were friends, and his response? Oh, I know. Do you know why she ghosted me? He then suggested turning the upcoming Meet the Friends event into a double date for me and some friend of his. When the day of the double date arrived, James's friend conveniently didn't show up. According to James, his friend was too afraid of women. Throughout the outing, Jane and James were embarrassingly affectionate, making out everywhere. I felt like a third wheel the entire time. To escape the awkwardness, I decided to drop by a store where my ex-boyfriend worked. We were on good terms, and I thought it'd be nice to say hi. Of course, Jane and James tagged along, and James even invited my ex to join us for dinner. My ex agreed, though he seemed visibly uncomfortable around James. Meanwhile, Jane and James continued their over-the-top PDA, making the whole dinner painfully awkward. A few weeks later, Jane told me that she and James had officially become a couple. James had asked her via text, which felt impersonal, but she didn't seem to mind. She also mentioned that James had gone back to the store where my ex worked during their most recent date. He claimed he wanted to befriend my ex because he was just trying to make friends his age. However, my ex had clearly been uncomfortable during the dinner, so I wasn't buying James's excuse. As time went on, I started noticing more red flags. When I confided in Jane about some issues in my own relationship, she wasn't helpful. Instead, she kept comparing James to my boyfriend, saying things like, "James would never do that." Then, she mentioned a coworker who was looking for a girlfriend and said she'd shown him my Instagram. Apparently, her coworker thought I was cute. Later, Jane told me that her coworker and James had become fast friends. She casually mentioned this as if it were normal. But then she put James on the phone. To my shock, James started advising me to break up with my boyfriend. Mind you, James had never even met him. He also suggested that I should date someone of his ethnicity, as if that was relevant. Things got even stranger when I received a follow request from Jane's coworker. When I asked Jane about it, she admitted that James had told the coworker to follow me. A few hours later, James himself requested to follow me on his alternate account. I feel like I'm losing my mind. No one else, Jane, my boyfriend, or even my other friends, seems to think James' behavior is as weird as I do. My friends have said it's odd, but they don't seem nearly as alarmed as I am. Am I overreacting, or is this as bizarre as it feels? Update. Thank you all so much for the advice and support on my original post. I wanted to provide an update on what's been happening since then, because things have gotten even more complicated. After my boyfriend and I resolved our argument, I decided to fill him in on the situation with Jane, James, and Jane's coworker. Initially, he didn't seem overly concerned, but as time went on, it clearly started to bother him more. That same evening, Jane came over, and the very first thing she said was, "So, what happened with your boyfriend? Everyone is dying to know." And by everyone, I mean James and my coworker. She had a huge smile on her face, as if this was some kind of amusing gossip. I immediately pointed out how strange it was that they were so interested in the status of my relationship. Jane just brushed it off, claiming her coworker wanted to apologize to me because James had made it sound like my relationship was over, which apparently was why he sent me a follow request. However, Jane admitted that James had been repeatedly asking her if I'd broken up with my boyfriend yet. The conversation shifted when Jane started sharing her growing frustrations with James. She mentioned that he had begun making comments about her body, specifically about her eating habits. One instance she brought up was when she wanted dessert while they were out, but James refused to order anything and then asked her, "Do you get dessert every time you go out with your friends?" Jane said his tone made her feel judged, and she alluded to him fat-shaming both me and another one of her friends. A day or so later, Jane called me again. During our conversation, she casually mentioned that James had once again asked her if I had broken up with my boyfriend. This time, Jane also brought up a trip she'd been wanting all four of us to take together. She admitted she didn't think it was a good idea anymore. My curiosity got the better of me, so I asked what had changed her mind. Her response shocked me. She said, "If James and your boyfriend were in the same room, I think he would fight him." She was completely serious. To clarify, my boyfriend and I had a typical disagreement. Nothing major, no lying, cheating, or abusive behavior. It was just a simple conflict that we resolved. The idea that James, my friend's boyfriend, who I barely know and initially turned down, would feel the need to physically confront my boyfriend over this is not only unwarranted, but completely absurd. The next day, my boyfriend brought up James and asked if anything else had happened. I told him about James' latest comments, and he seemed genuinely concerned for her well-being. He even suggested that I should consider intervening because the situation seemed to be escalating. The truth is, I've tried intervening before. When Jane and James first started dating, I gently expressed my concerns about his behavior, but Jane dismissed me outright. She even accused me of being jealous. That accusation hurt deeply, especially because I was already in a happy relationship at the time. It wasn't just an insult to me, it felt like a direct attack on the integrity of my relationship with my boyfriend. After reading so many thoughtful comments from my original post, I think I've finally come to a decision. For my own peace of mind, I need to put some distance between myself and Jane. Am I wrong for doing this? Should I make another attempt to intervene, or is it better to step back and let her figure this out on her own? I wasn't planning on posting another update, but so many of you have asked, and I truly appreciate the advice and support you've shared. It's been incredibly helpful as I've tried to navigate this messy situation. After reading some comments on my last post, I decided to unfollow James on social media and remove him from my followers as well. Now, this part might be a bit tricky to explain without revealing too much about the people involved, so I'll do my best to keep it clear while maintaining privacy. One of the things that made my friendship with Jane so strong was how often we'd call and text. This constant communication allowed us to stay close despite any distance. However, it's also made it incredibly difficult to create space between us without her noticing. One night, Jane called me, practically begging me to answer. When I picked up, she sounded nervous and admitted that James wanted to take a major step in their relationship, one she'd never taken before. She was clearly anxious, and based on how James had handled the situation, I told her that she didn't have to do anything she wasn't comfortable with. She assured me that she was okay and decided to go through with it. A few days later, Jane came over for dinner, saying she needed to talk about what had happened. She revealed that the day after this big step, James showed up with her coworker Alex, the same guy James had tried to set me up with. Jane said she started feeling uneasy because she found herself paying more attention to Alex than James. She felt guilty about it, but also shared how upset she was when James began showing her pictures of other women he'd been with and openly talking about them. According to Jane, it was Alex, not James, who comforted her and reassured her that James really did care for her. Jane admitted, "My boyfriend should be the one comforting me, not Alex." So I asked her outright if she had feelings for Alex. I expected a firm no, but instead she looked down at her plate with a guilty expression and said a quiet no while avoiding eye contact. This led to a deep conversation about her possible feelings for Alex. Jane insisted she didn't have feelings for him and emphasized that James was her boyfriend. But at one point she almost slipped up and said, "My boyfriend is Ga," before stopping herself. Her eyes widened, and she quickly corrected herself, saying, "You know what I meant." Jane then started justifying her relationship with James by saying he was a better match because he had ambitious career plans, while Alex didn't seem as driven. Personally, I found her logic flawed. Just because someone claims to have big goals doesn't mean they'll achieve them, especially given James's behavior. What really bothered me was how Jane seemed to believe Alex wasn't good enough for her, yet somehow thought he was good enough for me. It made me realize how much messier things could have been if I had followed James's suggestion to break up with my boyfriend and date Alex, completely unaware of Jane's feelings for him. As finals wrapped up, I was supposed to have one last date with my boyfriend before leaving for the holidays. He kept canceling throughout the week, and on the final day, he canceled again, with a dismissive, "See you when you come back," before hanging up. That was the last straw for me. Our relationship already felt one-sided. He rarely texted or called, and we only went on dates once or twice a week. I felt neglected and unimportant, so I decided to end it. Unfortunately, the timing couldn't have been worse. Breaking up right before the holidays left me feeling isolated, as most of my college friends were busy with their own plans. Meanwhile, I had been keeping my distance from Jane, but going home brought its own challenges. My mother was incredibly critical of me, and her constant comments chipped away at my self-esteem. Combined with the breakup, I started feeling completely unworthy. At my lowest point, Jane reached out, and I decided to confide in her. I told her about everything happening at home, and she offered her condolences, saying it was probably for the best. A day or two later, she texted me to share that James was thrilled to hear about my breakup. He even told Alex that I was now single and suggested Alex reach out to me. Jane assured me that she had resolved her issues with James and insisted she had no feelings for Alex. "He's just my coworker. James is my boyfriend," she emphasized. At least this time, she got the names right. When Alex eventually messaged me, I decided to respond. I was feeling lonely and figured it wouldn't hurt to chat. The conversation was light, but at one point, I asked him what he thought about Jane and James as a couple. Alex said they were very different and that James needed to stop talking about other women. When we discussed my ex, Alex said, "I can't stand guys like that. I don't know why girls always end up with them. Sometimes I think I should be one of those guys, but I just can't. It's not how I was raised." I asked if he liked James, and Alex hesitated before saying, "He's changing. But have you heard him talk about the girls he's been with?" I don't know what else you'd call that. Later, Jane called me saying Alex had asked to swap a shift with her. She also mentioned that when she asked him about our conversation, he brushed her off with a "don't worry about it" before hanging up. I told her not to stress and went about my day. 30 minutes later, Jane called again, this time demanding to know why I had unfollowed James. She claimed she noticed while on the phone with him and checking his following list. Frustrated, I told her I had unfollowed him a while ago. She swore she wouldn't say anything to James and promised to keep it between us. Reluctantly, I shared some of the weird messages Alex had sent me. Her response? "So, he likes me." That hadn't even crossed my mind. I had interpreted Alex's comments as him simply recognizing James's flaws, but Jane seemed convinced Alex had feelings for her. And now, my family is weighing in on the situation. Both my mother and sister believe Alex likes Jane, but they've also accused me of secretly liking James, which couldn't be further from the truth. Looking at everything laid out like this, I feel exhausted. Maybe it's time to cut ties with both Jane and Alex and remove myself from this entire mess. I don't feel as strong as I did when this all began, but maybe walking away is the only way to regain my peace.